Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the very first Coffee and Conversation with myself, Leslie Appleton Young. It is so nice to see you all here this morning, bright and early, 8 o'clock on the West Coast. I hope you have a cup of Joe with you or some tea and an open heart. That's all I ask. That's the admission for listening this morning. And typically I'm going to have a special guest to actually have a conversation with, but for this first kind of edition of the Woman Up Life Lessons series, as I'm calling it, I thought I just would set the stage, set the framework, say a few things about what you might be in for. And then when we meet again in a month on, I believe it's April 7th, the first Wednesday of the month, there will be a true conversation and we'll do a really deep dive on some of the life lessons that I'm going to lay out kind of at a broad view this morning. I want to say up front, I'm not putting myself out as an expert on life by any means. But I will say that after 6 decades on this planet, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of failures. I've had some beautiful successes, and it's given me just a huge toolbox and a lot of experience to share if anyone were interested. There's been a tremendous number of transitions, as you can imagine, for someone who's been around as long as I have. Just to give you some highlights, I have two wonderful daughters. I've been married twice. One was a very long-term alcoholic marriage, which taught me a lot. I'm a native Californian, and I spent my 20s on the East Coast in graduate school and had my first daughter there. I worked for the California Association of Realtors for almost 37 years and weathered with many of you the birth of the internet and the digital economy, the Great Recession. And I'm happy to say that at the age of 68 and a birthday looming this month, I am more fit and more happier than I ever could have imagined. I met my soulmate at the age of 65. So let me say right out front, there's no expiration date on us, right? It's never too late. Anything is possible. I truly believe that. And I wanted to start, even before I get to this overview of the life lessons, to talk a little bit about retirement and aging, because these are the questions I've been getting, even though I'm kind of only 2 months into my quote unquote retirement. I've had people ask, like, what's it like? Are you bored? What do you miss? What do you wish you'd done differently? What comes next? I mean, just a lot of questions. So for those of you that have many, many more years before you'll be looking at something like this, let me just share a few items. And I'll start by saying I don't feel retired. I'm very lucky to have had a profession that I absolutely love and have had some consulting opportunities. So I'm still engaged in following the market, seeing what's going on in the industry space and talking to people about it. So that's been really terrific. I still feel very engaged, but I don't have kind of the day to day being part of an organization and managing a team where you've got an HR department and you've got a lot of weekly meetings and all of those kinds of things. I'm pretty much just responsible for myself, and that's been a wonderful thing. I've embraced that change. The other thing just has to do with retiring during a pandemic. Last year was an out of body experience for me because I had imagined, as I went through January and February of 2020, what my farewell year was going to look like. And just so many of the presentations that I'd done on an annual basis for so many years, it was going to be the last time. And it was just going to be so much fun to see so many people that I've come to love and enjoy and consider close personal friends. And as you can imagine, none of that None of that happened. Everything changed. And I actually, on March 13th, flew back to Sarasota, Florida. So even the familiarity of, going to, a coffee shop or going to work out in Pasadena and getting together with my girlfriends and going into CAR and heaven forbid the Burbank airport, my second home, all of that was gone. And it's been a unique opportunity to start to rebuild from the ground up, and I know many of you have read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if you haven't, I hope you will. I think it just had its 25th anniversary a few years ago. But one of the tenets, one of the 7 habits is, putting the big rocks in first, right? And so here I am with this blank slate and a relatively new relationship and a consulting thing and nobody, not a lot of big daily looming deadlines, so what does it mean to put the big rocks in first for me right now? And honestly, the first thing is getting my cardio in, is getting my Peloton in. I've made that transition. For years, I wanted to be the person that couldn't live without working out every day. I know those of you that don't do it are rolling your eyes, and those that do are shaking your head, but that is the one thing that I can do for myself every day that will make a difference in that day, a very positive difference. And again, no need to go into great detail, but that is really a foundation. And this whole idea of extreme self-care. I know sometime in the last 10 years, one of my realtor friends, Cynthia Carley, gave me a book on extreme self-care. And it was really, at the time, just a revelation. It's like, you mean you can do that? I mean, you could really carve out time to take care of yourself. And when you're not in the daily hubbub, which is me now, you have more time to do that. So I don't want to downplay how wonderful it is to kind of take a breath, and be able to put first things first. So I don't have a lot more to say in terms of putting a life together, because as I mentioned, we're still in the pandemic, and none of the things John and I talked about doing, which included a tremendous amount of travel, have we been able to do since I retired. So I'll update you in terms of what's relevant as far as that goes as we go on. The other thing I want to cover is just the whole issue of aging. And my goal is to age with power in a very, very positive way. And I mentioned last week on the Friday Facebook Live for Woman Up, the book by Norma Kamali called I Am Invincible. And I just love this book. I've decided she's my spirit animal. She is just, it's about simplicity. It's about, taking care of yourself. It's a classic style. And she met her soulmate when she was 65. And 10 years later, at the age of 75, during the pandemic, they realized they really wanted to get married, and that's what they're doing. So that's why I said, no expiration points. But she talks in I Am Invincible about staying relevant, continuing to grow and learn, taking care of yourself so you feel empowered. And here's a quote: "If you feel good and look good, your actual age makes no difference for all that you are able to do. Stay inspired, be curious, learn something new every day, ask questions, open your mind to new ideas, and the result is an ever evolving, exciting you." And I think that sums up so beautifully how I'm kind of envisioning this next chapter in my life. She goes into great detail in the book on the 3 pillars of a healthy lifestyle, which are sleep, diet, and exercise. No more about that right now, but just obviously those are the key foundations of a good life. And the other thing that attracted me to this book, as I read a summary of it, was her comment that walking away is one of the most important things I've learned in my life. Most people don't leave. they agree or orchestrate a reasonable compromise. She said, I walked away from my marriage to save my soul. And her final comment on that was, you have to be comfortable giving up what you have for what you could gain. And there's just so many great words of wisdom there in terms of, as uncomfortable as your life is, it is your comfort zone. It is what you know. And the future out there is uncertain, right? You don't know if it's actually going to be better out there. But I will share from my experience, and it was June 20th, 2015, that I walked into my first Soul Cycle class. And I really look at that as, the begin. I'd already gotten divorced and was kind of thinking about creating this new life. And I walked into my first class. It almost killed me. And at the end, I thought, wow, this is this is me. This is what I want. But I never imagined, meeting up with an old friend, John Cicillo, and having this incredible love affair. I just, and I'm happy to say I was so happy before that happened, right? This isn't about that in my life, but it is about taking control and being powerful in your own life and making the difficult choices to put yourself first. And it's very, very hard to do that. If anyone knows that, it's me. But just how wonderful life can be. And if you're not living the life you want, hopefully during our look at all these life lessons, we can give you some context, perspective, and encouragement to think about those kinds of changes. So this is not your typical woman up about getting into the brokerage business or becoming a leader. This is a true focus on, personal development, know thyself, um, getting from point A to point B in your life when you just aren't sure what to do, and kind of staying on track. So you'll see in a minute as I go through these life lessons. So one of the things I would like from all of you is that if you have a life lesson that you would like to add to my list, please let us know. And we'd also love to hear the backstory. What happened in your life that you learned this lesson? What was involved? What was kind of the outline of that? And then my thought is, at the end of the year, we'll have a much longer list than Leslie's life lessons, and it will be the Woman Up life lessons. And I think I can talk Brie Martin into doing a wonderful infographic for us to share when we get that final list. So I think that's going to be very cool. I hope you'll feel energized to participate and share with the rest of the community, because so many of the things that we go through in life are really hard, and we can do hard. And to maximize the benefit of going through all that, when we share it with each other, it just multiplies in terms of its impact. So let me just start by going through my first life lesson is no change, no change. It is a mantra that I heard from a guy in a recovery house. He was one of the counselors there, and I was there with my ex-husband, and it really has had an impact on me. It must have been 20 years ago, but no change, no change. you know, if you don't change it up, it's not going to change, right? I mean, it's very obvious, but it gave me something to hold on to. So secondly, when you're stuck, just do something. Many of us are perfectionists. For the next step, we want to make sure it's the perfect next step. And the reality is that may not be available to you right now, but something is. And whatever you do, you can, if it's the wrong step, make a mid-course correction for the next one. But what you've done by changing things is the universe has changed, right? The options open to you have changed. How you think about your situation has changed. So, you might be stuck on something for a long, long time. Do something different, you know, and see where that gets you. I will mention that, there's this definition of insanity that says insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking it's going to turn out a different way. And of course, it never does. And I really disagree with that because I have to be completely honest. To me, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and knowing, like, you're going to get the same result, but you do it anyway. And that's my next life lesson. Denial. Denial is a killer, right? If you can't deal with, not deal, if you can't recognize reality, right? If you're living your own reality of fake news, you're never going to be able to move on. You need your facts. You need your reality, right? In order to address it and move forward. So clarity there is absolutely critical. And once you make a change, like, keep going, right? Like, most of life is showing up, and if you're out there, there's an opportunity for you to make a connection, right? What other industry exemplifies the benefits of networking more than real estate, right? How many leads have you gotten in your career from so and so talked to so and so saw me there, right? It's all about visibility. I remember when my daughter moved to New York and was in a dead end job and wanted something else. And I kept saying, Kelly, the way this works, just stay out there and expand your friend base and something will happen. And it did. And I still look at her, but she has this amazing career now. And I said, see what happened. You're wonderful, but you had to be wonderful in an environment where someone saw how wonderful you are and gave you this opportunity. So, just keep keep going. Another life lesson learned the hard way that was a real revelation for me is very simple. You are what you feel. I remember being in a psychiatrist's office with my ex-husband. It was couples counseling. And then I talked to him individually, and I'm just kind of pouring out all of the anguish and unhappiness that I had, all of these feelings, but I wasn't really owning them. It was like they were the problem. And he looked at me and he said, Leslie, you are what you feel. And it just was this light bulb moment where I thought, oh my goodness, how I'm feeling is relevant information. It is not something to be cast aside. It's telling me something that I need to process and act on. So that's why feelings are so important. I have this joke with John. He goes several mornings a week and has coffee with two other gentlemen, and it's always fun to hear what they talk about. But when he goes out the door, I joke and I say, "Hey, you guys going to talk about your feelings?" And they don't. Just no surprise there. They don't. Um, have you ever had a friend in trouble, with a tremendous loss, whatever that might have been, and feel immobilized, like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do? And my next life lesson is, when a friend is in pain and you don't know what to say, call anyway. You don't need to fix it because you can't, but by calling, you show that you care and you can listen, right? You can just listen. And I've given this example several times when I go on my rant about active listening, but this kind of situation, let's say your friend just lost her mother to cancer. The last thing in the world she needs to hear is your mother's experience with cancer. No, that is not going to help her. You don't want to hijack the conversation back to you, even though it's coming from a good place in your heart, right? You're trying to show her, I relate to you, right? I've been through it. But keep the focus on your friend, even if it's just listening. Ask questions, ask how you can help, leave the message, make the call, and you'll never regret it. My dad passed away suddenly at the age of 63, and I still remember Lisa Edwards, who is still at CAR. I still remember back in 1989 that she was the first person to call me from work, and she was sobbing like me, and I'll never forget it. You know, it just made made all the difference. So this listening is really important. The other thing I learned from that same psychiatrist who said you are what you feel is that well, let me give you the situation. He looked at me and he said, Leslie, fill in the blank. I like people who are blank. And I immediately said, kind. That's always been my number one. How kind is that person? And he kind of furrowed his brow, and I said, what's wrong? And he goes, well, it's just an interesting choice of all the, hundreds of thousands of adjectives that you could have picked. You picked that one. And it made me feel like, oh my God, I'm failing with my shrink. Like I wasn't supposed to say that I like people that are kind. And I'm now realizing that that was probably a bit of a male female disconnect, because I have doubled down on being kind. I value my friends because they are kind. And as I age with power, I also want to age with extreme kindness. I never want to be one of those crotchety older people that feels like, I've earned it and I can be, demanding, and I can be sour. I don't want to be that. I want to be even better and more positive and more loving and kind. So that's been a word that I've been able to rally my resources around for a long time. And I hope you have a word that does that to you. So speaking of working out, I think this was at one time my first life lesson. It was walking is not cardio. I'm sorry. And that was just because for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I'd been taking these long walks around Pasadena on the weekends, like 4 or 5 miles a day. And I'm listening to Audible books and I'm feeling like I'm really getting it together. And like nothing's changing, like outwardly, like my body's not changing. It's like whatever. And then I start going to Soul Cycle, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, that's cardio. It's very, very different. So walking is a wonderful thing. We all need to walk and walk more. But if you think that's your workout, it's really not. I also remember, this is a great life lesson from one of the my former colleagues at CAR, and he was just religious about working out. And I still remember him looking at me and saying, when I'm physically strong, I'm mentally strong. So that connection between your body and power physically and power mentally is very real. Another life lesson is be afraid and do it anyway. You know, the only way out is through, right? You've got to feel, you got to feel the feelings, right? And sometimes there's fear, and fear is nothing to run away from. Make it count, embrace it, feel afraid, and then get up and do it anyway. Another life lesson that will help you focus on what's important is to stay on your side of the street. And what does that mean? I have a friend, Lottie Elam, who just such a dear person. And so many times in our conversations over the years, she looked at me and she said, Leslie, not my monkey, not my circus, and this idea that you are the problem solver for everybody else is not correct, right? That's going to drain a lot of you need to pick your spots. And the other thing is this, you also don't want to deprive other people of the growth that they're going to get from solving their own problems, having their own experience. I remember one of my kids was going to a junior year abroad in Italy. And of course, you can imagine everybody had advice on where to go, what to do, da, 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 da. And I'm here feeling like I'm being really helpful, saying, Kelly, you need to, and she looked at me and she said, Mom, I want to have my own Italy. And I was like, oh my God, I want you to have that too. That spirit of discovery, the whatever that trajectory looks like for the year that you're there. You go have that. And I quit trying to be so helpful. Because people have a right, and it's really hard with your kids because you want to protect them from the world. But some of you have heard me say this. I think the freshman year of college, you are paying money for them to have a horrible roommate the first year, right? That's part of the deal. Don't rescue them. Make them work it out, right? If the food in the cafeteria is terrible, great, because they'll learn that they can survive outside of the family bubble, if you will, and they'll grow, right? They'll be proud of themselves, and then the other byproduct is when they do come home, they're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I have the best parents ever." So clearly, things are a little different right now with the pandemic, but just in general. Before you rescue, think about, are you also taking away from them a valuable lesson that they should be learning. Now, a couple of things about relationships with a partner, a spouse. And I said this earlier, you don't have an expiration date. There's no time limit on falling in love, right? You need to do you, right? Be open to you. But one of the things I heard from one of my kids was, I want any man I'm with to be at least the quality of my girlfriends. And, you know, that's a really high bar. I think most of us would say that the quality of our girlfriends, and I'm thinking about the Woman Up community right now, is off the charts, right? They are excellent people. They are go getters and they're kind. They're changing the universe. They're wonderful, right? They're givers. So why would you lower your standards when it comes to someone that you're going to be intimate and share your life with? You don't want to do that. And as Sheryl Sandberg said so eloquently, who you marry is the most important career decision you make, or who you partner with is the most important career decision you make, because there isn't, the personal life here and the professional life here, and they never touch. They're intertwined, right? Who you bring to the table professionally is 100% impacted by the environment that you have at home. And having had a toxic environment for a long time and comparing it now with a loving environment, it makes all the difference, right? It makes all the difference. So really, really keep that in mind before you roll the dice without really thinking about what's going. Um, Sometimes what you think is protecting you is actually holding you back, right? And you need to, again, this is this looking with clarity, looking without the sunglasses of denial, and really seeing clearly what you're afraid of, because it's very possible that your worst fears can be realized and you end up happier than you ever dreamed of. When I was contemplating getting divorced and going through all of the implications in terms of family relationships and financially and all of this, the reality is that a lot of the things I was afraid were going to happen did happen. It wasn't like I was exaggerating the implications of my decision, but what I was undervaluing was what I was going to get on the other side of this. And I will tell you, one of my most favorite life lessons is, when your insides match your outsides, it's priceless, right? That is a goal I had for myself for many years, and to now be in that place where my insides and my outsides match. Oh, what a gift that is, to be able to be your authentic self. And then my last one is, love will find you. you know get happy on your own. Create a life, dive back into the life you already have. Just, I saw this was on Instagram a few days ago. I mean, think of how long you wanted the things that you have now, right? So be grateful for the now, right? And and just things will happen. You will be open to the universe, right? People are attracted to people that are happy, and just envelop yourselves in a community of love and support. And I am so grateful for the Woman Up community, for the friendship that I have with Sarah, and with Deborah, and with all of you. This is just truly a delight in my life. So what's going to happen next? So April 7th at 8 o'clock, I will be back, and I will be back with a special guest and a deep dive into one of the themes that I've covered in the life, in these life lessons. And we will send around, as soon as I do some final edits, a draft of the first look at the life lessons, so you can kind of familiarize yourself and have a reminder of what we talked about, this morning. So with that, I want to cheers everybody with a cup of good strong coffee, and wish you a fabulous Wednesday, and thank you for being here. And I will see you next month with another coffee and conversation. Thanks so much.